We have a new movement has sprouted up here in America, Make America Healthy Again. I was put on my first diet at 5 years old, and my mom was the pursuit of my weight loss. We went through every fantastical version of nonsense that you could possibly go through in Los Angeles, California. When I was 10, we went to this woman's house. She took a Polaroid of me, turned it over, smeared a little water on the back based on the color scheme of the refracted light in the water. She stuck an electrode into a bottle of water. She positively charged this. I was told that, like, no matter what, before I ate or drank anything else, I had to have a capsule. And this was going to cure my fatness, right? Like, but then down to, like, there was a time where all white foods were off limits, another time where all red foods were off limits. The through line that my parents kind of ingrained into me was this idea of natural. Everything had to be natural. And, like, I made this mistake moving from diet to diet that I wouldn't discard everything when the diet didn't work. There would be aspects that I would cling to. And so it came to me being a full adult and going like, oh my God, now I really need to lose weight, with all kinds of crazy ideas on lectins and gluten and wheat sensitivities, all of which ultimately proved to be bullshit. And I finally lost weight just by taking control of my life and eating less overall and exercising a bit more. And it was really hard to come to that because I wanted so badly for it to be the food. But now when America is going to become healthy, I sit back and I wonder exactly how we're going to become more healthy if Coca-Cola is only allowed to use cane sugar. What effect will that have?
There's so many things in there I could touch on. I mean, we could start, there's two things. There's the natural and the Coke. Let's start with the Coke. The Coke, if it becomes more expensive, and this is soda taxes, right? So it's not a new thing. And that's something I think is important for people. Bloomberg tried to do a soda tax. There have been soda taxes in Mexico where the magical Coca-Cola comes from because people are still drinking too much soda in Mexico. And the short answer is it's certainly not going to help with people's weight, except insofar as if they buy less of it because it's more expensive. That could be good. People might prefer the flavor. It's debatable, blind taste test. But no, there's no difference when it comes to weight loss or healthfulness, which are not the same thing, as you well know, between cane sugar and high fructose corn syrup. I think the only impact it will have is price.
If it's just Coke or soda in general, here was another problem. Like I can get all into, I ate less. There is something to the highly processed food being ultra palatable, and I can eat more of that. This is something I recognize today. The majority of the food I eat today is one ingredient foodstuffs. It's beef, chicken, fish, broccoli, rice, you know what I mean? But
yeah,
so that is how I've designed my life.
Well, so let me say something else. Actually, I thought about this, the high fructose corn syrup. It's possible that it could be backfire. So an example I've been giving lately to get people to understand why I'm personally concerned about some of the things that RFK Jr. stands for symbolically is American Spirits cigarettes. There's a warning on American Spirits cigarettes.
These were the last all-natural cigarettes I smoked because they were natural.
That's right. So this is a why. So that's great. This is a widespread thing. People really thought these cigarettes, they didn't have additives and they were all natural. And so there's now an extra warning on them because they had what's known as a health halo. And so one thing that worries me, this happened with orange juice. I would talk with physicians who would tell me that they had families coming in saying, I don't understand why our kids gaining weight. We've got them on juice, fresh juice from fruits rather than artificial soda. It didn't seem to make a difference. So I have a concern that the all natural thing will lend a health halo to foods that people otherwise recognize as ultra palatable and highly caloric. So that's something that worries me with it. And we've seen it happen with American Spirits. People really did believe that they were somehow better for your health because they had a picture of Native American on them.
Dude,
and they were all natural.
They have an organic version. You can get organic cigarettes.
Yeah.
It's madness.
It is madness. Although I want to say, I think one thing that happens, I've noticed now when I talk about RFK Jr. or Maha or any diet, really. I mean, this goes back to, I don't know if you remember, I don't know how much you or your listeners know about, there was Grain Brain with Dr. Perlmutter.
Sure.
And this, and this goes back, there was a guy in the early to mid 19th century, the Horace Fletcher, the masticator, who told everyone you had to chew your food 100 times before you swallowed it. And he got celebrities, he had Rockefeller, he had Henry James. So one thing I try to tell people is, look, I'm with you. There's something wrong. RFK Jr. and anyone else who says there's something wrong with our diet environment, we need to change things, I'm with them 100%. And I want to make it extremely clear that I think that is a good thing to focus on. I'm not saying Coca-Cola and Twinkies should be scarfed down because there's no such thing as processed foods. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that there is a responsible, evidence-based way to approach fixing our dietary problems. And then there are ways that rely on symbol systems. Like you were saying, I love that story about rubbing something on a photograph. There are things that rely on what I would say as a religion scholar, rely on kind of quasi-religious symbols for their effectiveness. And that's something I hope we get to a little bit, because natural to me is that religion disguised as science? What we used to eat is the Garden of Eden. What nature wants us to eat is what God wants us to eat. I see some problems with that. And I think it's worth laying out how RFK Jr. smuggles in these irrational belief systems that come trailing a lot of baggage and a lot of bad beliefs about chemtrails and vaccines and other stuff in the process of trying to do something good, which is to get us to eat more healthfully and be more physically active.
I guess at the end of the day, I only have my experience to go by. And so I definitely lost weight when I was put on the blood type diet, which but here's the caveat to that, is that I never got thin. I never got to a healthy weight, because there came the point where I was eating enough to support my weight at a much higher weight than I wanted or needed to be at. And there's no function to lessen that. So when I think about any of this, I'm just thinking about what I've had to do for myself, which is over and over and over again, refine, what do I want? What am I trying to achieve? And so when I hear Make America Healthy Again, for me, first of all, I see everything through the lens of obesity, because that was my experience. And I recognize that. And I recognize that it's also not the only health problem in America. There's also cancer. So if he's coming and saying, we can link cancer to this stuff and we're going to excise it from the American diet and really put a dent in cancer, I have no problem with that. And I, to your point, I think the idea of just making America healthy being in the ether is super positive. Like, let's all get on board. Let's take more walks. Let's spend more time outside. Let's eat healthier portions and be more mindful of health. That's all great. But I've had Casey Means on my show, and I really, really like her a lot. But my experience has been, you take sugar away from me, I'm going to overeat potatoes. You take potatoes away from me, I'm going to overeat salmon. You take salmon away from me, I'm going to overeat X, Y, and Z. I am accustomed now to over consuming.
Yeah. So I mean, it's interesting that you mentioned Casey Means, and I've been doing this. I've been on this beat for, over a decade now. And one thing I've learned is that, as with traditional religions, when people are desperate, they're like, why can't I change my diet? What is wrong with me? Or they're scared. My dad got cancer. What's going on? How do I avoid it? And someone comes along, a prophet, a guru, a doctor, and says, look, relax. I have the answer.
Yeah.
I know what causes disease. And I've seen this, the ancient Taoist monks, because even back in the day when everything was natural, I mean, these people, this is 2,000 years ago when there was no such thing as processed foods. And they were doing the same thing. They were like, look, with our special diet of wild foraged vegetables and whatever, and you avoid the 5 grains, the woo goo, you won't go bald, your complexion will clear up, right? So I've seen this stuff. You'll live forever, you'll be able to fly and teleport, all this kind of stuff. So the dietary promises through following rules is just a common pattern, and it's cross-cultural. So I found that people will find someone like Casey Means or David Perlmutter or Andrew Huberman, whoever it is, for whatever reason, the symbol system that person is using clicks, at least temporarily. And they have a kind of come to Jesus experience. They're like, oh my gosh, I'll follow this. I will do it. And they wake up the next day and they start taking, Brian Johnson's supplement stack and eating the super shrooms or whatever. I don't know what it is, right? And that feeling of empowerment is almost like a religious experience. You're like, this is it. I found the rules that I can follow. And so, I mean, it's a long way of saying, I'm really wary of walking in and telling someone who has been empowered by the way in which these folks talk, that I have the solution, it's cell metabolism. I have the solution, it's chewing 100 times a day. I'm wary of coming in and saying, look, that's BS. Because at the end of the day, if it's working for you and you're feeling empowered, and that's gotten you out of a hole, I think that's great. I think that's great. I'm just afraid that, for one, the empowerment is built on some falsehoods, right? There isn't actually a single solution for avoiding disease. Unlike, against what Casey Means says, disease is not a choice. That is blaming the victim, man. It is not a choice. It's unfortunate, but true, right? And so I'm unwilling to create a fictional paradise that people can inhabit so that they don't have to be anxious about health, right? So I'm caught, and I don't know what to do. And maybe we can talk about that. I don't know how to approach this stuff without crushing people's dreams.
Yeah, I don't either, really. I get asked daily, tell me what you did, and I'm like, that's a 4-hour conversation. And if you want me to tell you what I did so that you can apply it, that's an even longer conversation, because I don't know anything about you. But I hear what they want is, don't eat carbs, don't eat meat, any version of that, whatever it is that is. If I come and say, I have your solution and it's very simple, but you got to follow it very strictly, I understand that, because I was so desperate for that for so many years. And I was the guy proselytizing carb-free diets for years. And then I just never, it was the weirdest thing, because it wasn't like I got to where I wanted to be on it. It was just this belief system I'd set up.
It's going to take all of us working together and listening to each other to make the kind of progress that we need to make America healthy in the future.
Make America healthy going into the future. Yeah, I mean, if we look back to the last time our life expectancy expanded, it really wasn't that long ago. So if we're making it healthy again, it was during high fructose corn syrup. You know what I mean?
Totally. No, I'm glad in a way. I feel like, there's been a lot of bad stuff, and there's a lot of bad blood right now politically. COVID was really tough for people, but I also think we're having some important brass tacks conversations about our health, about the meaning of science, about government authority. And my hope is that we will make these changes to our not getting red number 40 out, but to realize we need to change our dietary environment. We need to make food sacred again. We need to make cooking and food culture something we take seriously, because we've realized that when we don't, it's bad. It's bad for our health, physically and mentally. And I'm optimistic. And I think also there is a route. Maybe someday we could collaborate, who knows, on creating an approach to dieting that is less about, and the mindful eating people did this a little, but I don't think it was as effective as it should be, that focuses on the how of eating rather than the what.
Yeah, mindful eating.
I would love to see that.
This is another one, because in the present, I hate the word mindful, because the first time I heard it, I just wanted to shove the word back in their face and go like, you have no idea what I'm going through. You have no idea how much food noise there is in my head at all times. So mindful doesn't help me. Tell me what to eat. You know what I mean?
You can't trust your mind. Like that's the mindful eating thing. Trust your body's rhythms. And again, I'm oversimplifying, but that's not an effective approach either. You need rules, especially once you've gone off the rails.
The problem is that I really had to come up with my own rules, because it was like, what sends me off the deep end is not lectins, it's binge eating. I really had to figure out ways to curb that more than anything, because I'll binge eat ribeye steaks if I'm doing keto. You know what I mean? I just will.
I got to say, I went on the carnivore diet because I was interested in that. I was writing an article for Vice about it. And of course, you lose weight. Why do you lose weight? Well, I just don't. First of all, ribeye is more sating. So I'm just eating ribeyes every night, basically. And also, I don't know, do I really want to eat even more ribeye? Like at a certain point, I was just like, this food's not as exciting. So of course, I'm going to eat less. And it also changed my dietary patterns. I couldn't go out. I couldn't do any of these things. So hidden behind this food is poison, this is the diet our ancestors who never, lived forever ate. Hidden behind those is I think the real secret, which is you got to get the hell out of your current routine. Yeah. You got to become a true believer about your new routine, and then you have to treat that new routine as sacred. And I think we can do that.
Is it possible to create these sacred tenets that we live by if we know that we're making them up? Do you know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah, I don't think we're making them up. So, okay, so I'm gonna betray a little bit about myself. Religion's a whole separate thing, but I study classical Chinese philosophy. Confucius had this really interesting take on ritual. So he was a ritual master. He was understood as a ritual master. And then they give these examples of how he was a ritual master that are really interesting. One of them was he never stands in doorways. This is 2,500 years ago. And I was reading that. The first time I saw it, I was like, what? What is that? I was like, oh, wait, that's ritual. A doorway is meant for walking through, not standing in. And we all know the person in the elevator standing in the middle of it. It's like they are violating ritual. So when I tell you that you should eat when it is ritually appropriate to eat, I believe religiously, in the sense of Confucian ritual, that you are violating some kind of sacred law when you eat in the wrong place. Like, are you going to be punished by God? No. Are you going to automatically get cancer? No. But I really do believe you're violating a kind of law of the harmony of the universe. And when I respect those laws, I feel better spiritually. One of the things I have trouble managing, I'm not an alcoholic, but I drink more than I would like to drink. Just before this podcast, I was downstairs and I was like, the hard liquor's locked, but the fridge isn't. There's a couple beers in there.
Right.
So, should I have a beer? I was like, no, that is a ritually inappropriate time to have a beer. You don't just drink a beer randomly at 2. You're violating the sacredness of the beer. And so I got my coffee instead. Yeah. That is the truth with a capital T to me. I would have violated some kind of law had I done that. And so I think we can create a dietary culture that is based on kind of capital T truths about when you should and shouldn't eat that also doesn't involve making shit up about what's poisonous and what isn't. I really think it's possible.
The beauty of what you're saying is really, if you work the night shift and you get off at 8 a.m., maybe 8 a.m. is ritually appropriate. So I think it really is individually important, and you can find this structure that is capital T true for the individual.
Yes.
But it can't be it doesn't have to be handed to you dogmatically.
That's right. But, and it's important, it's true for the individual in the sense that there isn't one rule for everyone, like lectins are poison or sugar is poison. But the truth for that night shift worker emerges out of the world. It is not their preference. You will know if you introspect, okay, here are the times where for me as a night shift worker, it's ritually appropriate. So it's not that you choose it. It's not that it's subjective. It emerges out of the sacred order of your
life. Yeah,
of your life. Exactly.
Oh my God, that's beautiful.